Thank you very much. My name is Robert Vaš. I'm the founder and president of GLOBSEC, and it is my great pleasure to be here. Congratulations, Linas, for a great conference. I'm very happy that GLOBSEC has the pleasure to be partner of this very important conference, not only for Lithuania, but for all the region. So congrats. And we are here in front of a very interesting panel conversation, yet another one, about very important topic, how to keep America hooked. I'm not going to introduce the speakers again because they were introduced by the moderator, but we have a very strong panel, and I hope that we will see some kind of also not only agreements, but disagreements and the real conversation and a debate. We are living really in one of the greatest systemic transformations since the end of Cold War. This is not just a period where we can sit and wait what will happen, and I think hope is not a good strategy. I think we will not come back to the transatlantic relations as we've seen them before. So this is really a systemic transformation. At the end, the world will look completely different. The rule-based order that have shaped global politics for decades is being tested from every angle. The Russian aggression, China's assertiveness, US shift to our more transactional approach. But this is all multiplied also by technological disruption that is redefining how power looks like. Europe in the last decades has been building its economic success on several things that I think has been false. First, on cheap oil and gas from Russia, that is over. On cheap goods from China, that is also over. And on cheap security provided by US, that is all over. So we have a huge investment gap in Europe that we need to fill very quickly, because we are facing one of the most dangerous periods. But these dependencies have become also the vulnerabilities. We also are seeing the Trump administration, which has brought a certain level of unpredictability to the support of Ukraine, but also many in Europe are questioning about how hard is the commitment to the European security. So the new Trump administration and the US is really a administration that has brought some kind of disruption to global politics. And disruption is not always necessarily bad. The question is, how can we navigate this disruption so we are stronger together? How do we navigate it in Europe that we keep America hooked in the European security, but not only in European security, but also in the multilateral system that has guaranteed the sovereignty and security for small nations like Lithuania, like Estonia, like countries of Central Europe. Because that rule-based order guarantees the same right for sovereignty and protection for small countries as well as big countries. And we are seeing some kind of shift also in here, where the big powers tend to trade territories of smaller countries. And I think this is a shift that we have to acknowledge and we have to also deny. So I think this is a good mix of questions, of strategic questions that this panel will try to answer. So let me start with Ambassador Philippe Étienne. You've been ambassador to the United States. You've been Sherpa to the French President Emmanuel Macron, so you know very well the European politics, but also the transatlantic politics. How can we balance the necessity for Europeans to do more and to do more in defense and security with the transatlantic link and with the clear goal to keep Americans interested in European security? And what would be the plan B if Americans would be retreating from Europe?
Well, first, thank you very much for the invitation. Maybe in my title you ask what is the mission Libération. I will start with that because it was about sharing the organization of the 80th anniversary of our liberation, in particular of the D-Day, the Normandy landing. And In this capacity, I had to welcome in France the amazing American veterans, 100 years, 102 years, who came to transmit their message to our young people and who received the Legion of Honor on the beaches of Normandy. So in this country, Lithuania, which I am so happy to be in again, where the notion of keeping the memory of our history and to learn from it is so important, I can tell you that this is for me a powerful message about not only the strong necessity, but also at the time where we see again the price of freedom, the dangers against our democracies, how much this link indeed is important. It is not only our history. At the same time, as you said, there is this, Robert, you mentioned unpredictability, but there is also what other panels have enlightened, which is the fact that the United States has moved, and everybody has moved in the world. There are new priorities. We know a bit also in France, the Indo-Pacific region, because we have some presence there. And I think it is understandable and also completely legitimate that the US is reordering its priorities. It's, as Christian Danielson said before the lunch, we need also this action in the Pacific Ocean. We need to keep the freedom of circulation. So I don't want to anticipate the next review, the next national security strategy of the United States. But it's something which the Europeans not only have to accept, but to work with. And I think to answer your question, there is absolutely no contradiction between having a stronger European defense on the one hand, and keeping the transatlantic link. I will tell you something from my experience of Ambassador of France to the United States. I met a lot of folks in the US, both from the two parties, by the way, who told me more or less the message, you speak very much about doing things and things, including European defense. Well, do them. Be stronger yourself. So I don't think it is contradictory. I even think that we will keep because we want to keep the American commitment to the security Europe as much in France as in the rest of Europe. And to keep it, I think but I speak under the control of American friends, I think we will keep it all the more than we show ourselves ready to take more on our shoulders, to do I know there is this expressions, burden sharing, burden shifting, to be able to do things when our American friends are not willing to do it, to have the capacities. So it is not contradictory. On the contrary, I think we have to draw many, many lessons from the war in Ukraine. We have a very priority, which is to develop NATO, to adapt NATO to this. France works also to this priority. NATO is our priority for European defense. At the same time, to develop the European defense functions inside the EU. The two are compatible. The two have to work together to avoid duplication in the two directions. And third, of course, as EU, not forget that we have other European countries like the UK, like Turkey, like Norway, with which we want to work. Let's think of the coalition of the willings, which the French president launched with the British Prime Minister. So I don't want to go to the details of what we have to do with NATO, neither with the EU. We have a positive developments with the EU starting to fund itself new instruments for stepping up in our defense. Somebody reminded us this morning about something very important. The Europeans now, France also has doubled its budget of defense in a couple of years. We now are spending globally very much. Somebody said more altogether than the United States. But we have to spend it in a very efficient way. This is the reason why the way we build this European market for defense equipment is very important. It is not only about budget, spending more. It's about performing efficiently, both military and in the military equipment industry. This is a question of the budget, not only the total amount, but how we spend it together. I will stop here maybe. If you want me to come into more details, I will be happy to.
We will definitely come back some of the very important questions and points you have raised. I have, and especially on the European industry military base, that is a very important question to go. So we might dig deeper into that. But I've said that there is a certain kind of unpredictability, but one thing is very consistent, that all the US administrations have been saying to Europeans, you have to do more. You have to spend more, and you have to do more. And I think the Trump administration has been very efficient in putting the right pressure on Europeans, because as a consequence, we have been able to raise the budget of NATO and of the European side of NATO tremendously up. So the outcome from the Hague Summit is really a breakthrough, and I hope that we will also, that it will not stay at the commitments, but we will be able to also implement it. So, Senator, let me come to you. You are one of the leading politicians on the state level in Pennsylvania. You are an advocate for defense, for transatlantic affairs. So how can the state level politicians influence the transatlantic affairs, and how do you see Europeans from your perspective?
Well, it's an honor to be here. Linus, thank you for an outstanding event as well. And it's great to meet so many of you. We are in partnership, separated by an ocean, but you see in the uniform there, I did 10 years in Germany. During the Cold War, after the Cold War, was an exchange student to North Germany as a kid a couple times. And so, you know, in many ways, my heart is in Central Europe. For Pennsylvania, we have, I think, the best partnership between a state and Lithuania. We have many state partnerships, but I think our friendship is so deep. The bond is really, really deep, and it reaches across a spectrum. And because of that relationship, Lithuania has a strong voice in Pennsylvania. To translate this, though, because not everyone here is from Pennsylvania, or may not even care, as far as your countries go, and to survive strategically, our alliance and our nations continuously have to adapt to the global environment. The environment's completely different. In the first Trump administration, only 5 of the 29 member nations were spending their promised 2%. Many nations were around 1%, lowballing the United States, hiding underneath the security umbrella we provided, and enjoying economic prosperity, social benefits, while the American people generally felt slighted. But that's changed now. Here we are 10 years later, and about 22, 23 nations are over the pledged 2%, and now on their way to 5%, especially in the case of Lithuania, that's going to set the standard for that in a couple months, it looks like. That's number one. If you want to have a voice at the table with Donald Trump, pay what you promised to spend. Just don't talk about it. You know, number 2 on my list here is buy American. And, you know, I know France has a big defense industry, Germany does, many countries do. Everyone wants the money to be, you know, spent on their own. But look what happened yesterday in Washington, D.C. The Prince of Saudi Arabia, once again, is spending an hour during an interview with Donald Trump before the world because he invests in America. He promised another $600 million in American industry. And that gets the president's attention. That shows respect. That shows a partnership rather than benefiting from an American security umbrella without paying your costs. He's coming in with money and he gets a voice at the table. So spend what you want, invest in American industry. Lithuania is setting an example. In many ways, my recommendation for the other nations out there is follow Lithuania's lead. Lithuania is purchasing $2 billion worth of American armaments. That gets you a voice at the table. You are now relevant to the America First policy. Another thing here is when you have a chance to communicate with the administration, be very clear and concise. So I'd expect the Lithuanian president or foreign minister will remind, you know, we're spending this in your industry. You know, we are exceeding the 4%, almost on the way to 5%. Continually get your message out there. Provide opportunities for President Trump to have wins. You'll notice when NATO spends more money, he'll talk about it. So Lithuania, the win would be, yeah, the Lithuanians are spending $2 billion on our industry here. It's relevant to America and the America First policy. Manage disagreements privately. Having a public dispute with the administration is suicide. Look, I saw many disagreements. I was a young man in Germany, but Helmut Kohl and Ronald Reagan worked really well together, but there were some major disagreements about bringing Persian missiles in, ground-launched cruise missiles in. There was protests, hundreds of thousands of Germans on the streets in West Germany. And Helmut Kohl always kept it private and respectful. That's the way, I'd say even more so now. If you have a disagreement, it's got to be behind closed doors. Don't let your your spokespeople go out there and say things that would damage a relationship. Because I think the partnership we have now is more important than ever since we have an emerging Russia with an uncertain future in Ukraine. We have to stick together. I'm going to wrap it up on this final thought here. One of our founders from Pennsylvania was Benjamin Franklin. We know him well. And what he said was interesting when we were signing our Declaration of Independence. He said, either we hang together or we hang separately. Let's hang together and win this global struggle we're facing. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Excellent points, and we will definitely come back to many of them. I forgot to mention, but I still can, that you can post questions on Slido here. So I'm already seeing a few questions piling up, so I will come back to them as we close the first round of responses. But Laurinas, let me get to you. Europe is facing already a hybrid war from Russia. We are seeing security incidents across Europe almost every day. Russians flying over the NATO territories, flying over air bases, over airports. We are seeing actions in Poland and other countries where the critical infrastructure is under attack. So are we already at war? Because also the hybrid war is a war. And if so, are we prepared to deter Russia? Is our posture enough today to deter Russia? Because what we've seen in Ukraine, I believe that was a failed deterrence. That was a failed deterrence. How do we prevent a larger attack from Russians, where we show our united commitment, but not also our capabilities, but also our political will to defend ourselves and to respond in a strong way?
First of all, thank you very much for the invitation, Linas. Great traditional event and a great question. The problem of NATO is what we are defensive alliance. Defensive means all the time trying to find reason for de-escalation if, risk is too high. That's why Russia is pushing the red line all the time and testing us and trying to get the reaction from us. And we know what it means, escalation, de-escalation game. And we're trying to put us in this game, and we know what West NATO will always try to find the reason for de-escalation. That's why we need to be transformed into active defensive alliance. So creating the dilemmas, not symmetrical one, but at least asymmetrical for our adversaries in our situations. We need to feel the costs of their provocations, diversions, and all that kind of hybrid things. So yes, I agree, we feeling the aggression, but it's a different level. If Ukraine is a brutal aggression, conventional aggression, here in NATO areas, we are trying, to bring us to the gray zone and try to test our deterrence architecture. I'm not saying the deterrence architecture is failed. We also had many interpretations here in Lithuania. In July, we had 2 drones, Gerberas, which flight from probably we were spoofed in Ukraine because Ukraine defended using all different tools, with radio electronical things for jamming and spoofing, and some 2 Gerberas drones, which are more, we can fly 600-700 kilometers with gasoline. We have gasoline in the back, and they crossed Lithuanian airspace and entered Lithuanian territory. And we had interpretations here, so our deterrence is already over, Why we don't have a detection system, why we don't have a soft kill, hard kill tools. We need to adopt to that kind. It's a new concept of warfare. But I'm not in line with the deterrence is architectural collapse. No, and the problem is, thing is that drones, they can make a house, they can, create very hard situations for the country, but we do not occupy. So we have deterrence architecture, but we need to do it stronger. What does it mean stronger in Lithuanian terms and our thinking? So first thing is persistent presence of allies here. So forward defense, stronger. Deterrence by denial, not deterrence by punishment. It means you need to have forces here as much as possible for deterrence and defense on the line, to be fast, also to have abilities for fast reinforcement and that kind of things. And you need to have much more flexibility in NATO defense planning. What NATO secure, you know, 4-star US general in Europe could make some decisions without, you know, voting of countries. He needs to have more autonomy for flexible decisions, to prepare logistical lines, you know, to make the exercises fast and so on, to be much more flexible, much more faster. We need to adapt to that, and we are doing that little by little. So our dilemma in NATO, I would say, our concepts sometimes looks old-fashioned. Ukrainian war reality is the impetus for us to adopt our doctrines, not to stick to old doctrines. It's not easy when you're in peacetime, because all our generals, you know, are also were taught by, you know, old doctrines, and to adapt to the new is quite hard. With drawn things, I remember discussion here in Lithuania. 2 years we have discussion: is it echo of the war in Ukraine, or is it a transformation of the war? Now we started to understand we need to implement that kind of thing, much more, you know, intensive. But we, I would say, maybe lost 1.5 years or maybe even 2 years. So this is now a challenge for NATO to be an active defensive alliance, creating dilemmas for adversary, and to adopt all doctrines.
Excellent point, and I hope we would have just more time, because we would need one more hour to react on all of the points you've mentioned. But a very strong point on active defense, which is important, and also your point on the escalation. We need to, there is a need to escalate to de-escalate, of course. Jakob, let me come to you. You have the privilege to be one of the last responders, or the last responder, so you can already react on some of the points which were mentioned here. But let me ask you a question. There is an upcoming new US global posture review. What do you expect from it, and how should Europe adjust?
Well, thank you, Robert. Thank you, Linus. Great event, great discussion. Really appreciate it. So on that particular question of the US Global Posture Review, we've been waiting for it for a while, right? It was due in the summer, I believe. I don't know when it is actually due, so I'll have to go according to the rumors that are kind of coming out. And I think in Europe, as I think this discussion has shown, we understand that for the United States, in this epic tectonic rivalry with China, there are new priorities. And we realize that we need to step up, not only funding-wise. Hague was, of course, a milestone, but actually in creating real world fighting capabilities. And EU is the great enabler there. Now, what I think I think I speak for most Europeans, and certainly those from this region, what we hope will come out of this posture review is not a radical drawdown of US troop presence in Europe, and certainly not along the frontline states and frontline regions. And these are the rumors I hear, but it will be interesting to hear what others have to say. So partly because that would weaken us together as allies, and it would also probably send the wrong signals. Russia respects strength. And if the drawdown is too drastical, it would maybe come across as weakness. And the second reason, I think, is really that the European and the Asian theaters are much more interlinked these days. It's not as if what is happening in Asia is delinked from Europe, and that has been talked about already a lot, but I think the North Korean troop deployments in Ukraine and around Ukraine is the best evidence of that. So that's incredibly important. So that's what I think and hope will come out of it. But in order to earn that confidence from the United States, we need to do all of the things which have been mentioned, turning the spending commitments into real capabilities. I mentioned that EU is the great enabler, and I think it's important to see EU really as a complementary tool to boost the fighting capabilities, which are of course in NATO. Much of that is already mentioned, national capabilities with the EU readiness program. We have the European Defence Fund, we have SAFE, and to be even maybe more concretely, I think we need to have a good dialogue with American friends and allies about what Europe should build additionally to what we do not have today. I'm thinking about air defense capabilities. Drones have been mentioned a lot. I'm thinking about long-range strike. I'm thinking about command and control, intelligence gathering. Some of that are areas in which the United States have spent billions for decades, which might not be replaced by Europe, but some of it, I'm sure, could and should. So those are some of the things. It's kind of a two-way street, Robert, here. We hope that posture review will not come with too many surprises in terms of drawdown, but we realize we need to do a lot of the work to actually earn a continued strong posture here, which is linked to the Asian theater, I think. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Excellent points. There are already more than a dozen questions here on the Slido, so I will have to choose. I can't ask every one and each of them, but let me turn. There is a question for Ambassador Étienne. Will France extend its nuclear deterrence to NATO as the UK has done since 1961?
Well, for us, of course, in view of the war of Ukraine, it's absolutely essential to increase also what I would call, although I am not expert, the conventional deterrence. Everything you have said to how to learn the new grammar of escalations, of strategic communication, all of this, we have to learn a lot. But of course, the nuclear deterrence on top of that remains absolutely essential and has been essential in the Atlantic Alliance. And our nuclear deterrence, our independent nuclear deterrence, is part of this. And our presidents, including President Macron lately, have clearly stated what is the meaning of this nuclear deterrence and has proposed to open a dialogue with other European countries. It is not about replacing the American nuclear deterrence. I heard somebody on this stage saying that we don't want to replace the nuclear. Of course, it has never occurred to us. This is something which we want to discuss with our European allies, because you cannot stop at the French border what we call the vital interests, of course. So this is something we have proposed to discuss. This is the notion. We want to have a conversation with our European allies without saying we want we think we can replace the European deterrence. And here, may I make one more point on the military industry? Because both of you mentioned this, and I think to develop the European military industry doesn't mean we will not cooperate with the American military industry. The war in Ukraine has really proved that we need the capacities, more capacities on the two sides of the Atlantic. And so I join Jakob when he mentioned a number of domains where the European industry must produce much more. And I know the example of France because I was ambassador to the US, and we also buy really important essential capacities in the US industry, but we need to reinforce, it is one of the lessons from the the war in Ukraine, we must to reinforce what we call the industrial and technological base in Europe of this defense industry, which is again not contradictory with cooperation.
Let me stay at this question because there are a lot of questions in this regard in Slido, because many of the questions are referring what Senator said, buy American and invest in Americans. But also there are a lot of questions, for example, one that wouldn't it be more smarter to turn it around because we need to invest in ourselves in Europe. Mario Draghi said the same, Europe needs to invest in itself. So my question is following up on what Ambassador Étienne said right now, is that how do we balance this? This is also about money and where this money is going to be spent. Europeans have tremendously increased the military spending. There are further commitments. In Europe, there is a hope that those money will also generate jobs. It will generate a stronger industry military base in Europe that will help us in technological advancement. It will help us in military advancement. Because let's be honest, there are several gaps in transatlantic affairs. One is how much have we been spending. The second that you mentioned is the efficiency of the spent money. And that's where we have huge gaps that we need to close. Because sometimes we are spending a lot, but as we put it together, sometimes it's smaller than the sum of all that what we put together because of the bureaucracies and inefficiencies, etc. And the third gap, which is really huge and it's growing, is the technological gap. And that's where we are lacking behind. We are not able to catch up. So how can we invest in Europe, but also bring the US companies with us to make sure that they are part of this renewed European industry military base that needs to grow? Because we've seen also in Ukraine that it's all about tech and it's all about the scale and ability to produce. And we are not there yet. So this is a question that is combining some of the questions from Slido to all of you as a reaction also for what you said at the beginning, but what Philippe, Étienne...
yeah, I was watching the comments roll in as I made those remarks. I know it's not popular or well received maybe from the major European powers. I get it, you have a massive defense industry as well as Sweden and so many other countries do, but I'm just offering you advice, take it or leave it. If you want a seat at the table, Donald Trump wants results. He wants to see investment, and that's how you do it. And Lithuania, you've done it right. $2 billion in aircraft and infantry assets and Javelin missiles. That gets his attention. That's more than a Saudi prince offered yesterday, $2 billion. I think he offered $600 million in additional investment. That message needs to get into the White House, and that's how you get a serious voice at the table, because you show you're investing in America, you're showing partnership. I think I like to compare it to my experience in NATO. 4 years in NATO, 3 deployments to Afghanistan in NATO with NATO brothers and sisters from Lithuania and elsewhere. I led the one center that had 80 men and women from 18 different countries, and we stood together. I wasn't in front, I wasn't behind. We stood shoulder to shoulder against our common enemy. I think this is symbolic at the strategic level when you invest in America when you can, that it's showing Donald Trump that we have a partnership. That's just the reality of today. And so take my advice if you want, but if you want to be taken serious in the Oval Office there, invest in America, show partnership and friendship. I know there's critiques about public disputes and what have you. Don't be one of those people making a public fight with Donald Trump or his administration. You will lose in the end, and your country will lose in the end. He's been very clear. He expects people from other countries to have their country first. America first, we're Americans. We expect you to put your country, but be practical as well. The strategic environment is the dynamic. The last thing that I have never seen before, living 10 years as a soldier, in Europe and watching Americans die in training accidents many, many times, especially during the Cold War, we had so many in Europe at the time, that it would be hardly noticed by the local media. It'd be an article, an A-10 crash, an American pilot died, or somebody was run over by a tank. What Lithuania did in March, when 4 of our soldiers from the 3rd Infantry Division died tragically in that training accident, your nation stopped. You moved heaven and earth to rescue our 4 men, and then the honor and homage you paid them and respect. I mean, this catches the attention of not just our president, but the entire nation. And for that, I say on behalf of America, thank you for taking care of our men.
Thank you. Any thoughts, Jakob?
Very briefly, I think that's exactly, of course, the way you should treat the fantastic contribution that America brings to European security. That I think that should be standard practice, of course. Now, I just wanted to say, representing or coming from a country with, slightly outsized defense industry in relation to the size of the country, that, I mean, it's possible to combine. I mean, just look at the Gripen fighter. It's got an American engine. So whatever, Gripen fighter is sold is providing a lot of jobs in America. And there's always all of those offset arrangements every time. So I think the suggestion is not that Europe should not have a defense industry. It is making sure that we do not set up, rules which say that we are not allowed to buy American, which, I mean, would absolutely not be possible from, I think, a Nordic or a Swedish point of view, but to, buy whatever is possible while also building and addressing the fact that Europe's defense industry is still too fragmented. And there we come to issues about national crown jewels and so on, which is difficult, but that, I think, is something that needs to be overcome somehow.
Lavrinas?
Yeah, many ideas. I was a defense minister of this country, for short but intensive 8 months, and I was big advocate of Buy American approach. And I know what works with Trump administration, and thank you, Senator, for your advices, recommendations, reality check. I mean, and we should understand that it's a new reality, and we should, adopt to that. And yes, of course, Lithuania is buying more than 20% of all our procurement is Americans. You mentioned javelins. We are second biggest buyer of GLTVs, Oshkosh, HIMARS, and that kind of things. So we are doing that. But we have some kind of dilemma. But if the lessons learned from Ukraine, Europe understands that we need to have, industrial base on our own. No, because you need to be less dependent on global chains of supply, on everything. So that's why you need to have home-based industry, defense industry, in many areas. If you look at both biggest gaps in NATO, if US will, let's pretend the worst scenario will get out. So it's intelligence, of course. It's long strike capabilities and anti-ballistic air defense. So it's the biggest gap in Europe. It's a gap in the whole NATO, but in Europe it's a total gap. So we need also to do more here in that capabilities. That's why some of our countries of NATO, EU-NATO countries, European NATO countries, investing into the Ukrainian defense for trying to bring their industrial base for long strike capabilities and so on. Because there is one problem which appeared several months ago. All that kind of things as HIMARS and things, we have codes, keys. It means some kind of technological dependency. And Ukrainian, experienced that kind of gap of time, when it was shut down, That's why it's a dilemma for countries. I want to buy American, but I want to not have it shut down weapons, if something happens. So we need to find balance here too, to be, confident on what it will work in every situation. But absolutely, I agree with you. What Buy American, it's the way what we should keep going. Thank you.
Excellent points, and you brought in a very important point, which we've learned recently. Especially when the drones were flying over European airspaces, is that we are unprepared for the economics of the war, because we were shooting them down in Poland with very expensive weapons, and we were not adapting as Ukraine has adapted. So paradoxically, we are dependent on the Ukraine innovation and their defense industry that has grown in the last couple of years, and make sure that we integrate it as a part of European defense industry base. So this is a very interesting shift where we sometimes need Ukrainian talent and innovation more than vice versa. So, or at the same level. So we are running out of the time, but let me ask one more question, which is here, and it's about the conscription system in Europe. Because there are a lot of ideas how to make the conscription system back. In some European countries, in Germany, they had this brilliant idea of lottery. I don't know if it's going to work, but can conscription system and a stronger reserve help Europe and also send the right signal to US that we are serious about our own defense? Jakob, I seen you want to...
Very briefly, I mean, I come from a country with a long history of conscription for 100 years, and then it was paused in 2010, and we reopened it. Back in the day, till the late 80s, about 50 young recruits did their military service every year. Now we're working hard to recreate it. I think it is incredibly important. It creates societal buy-in. It really means that there is a big critical mass of young men and women who can, stand ready to ship in. So I think that that's absolutely the way to go, briefly.
Philippe?
Well, in France, we had suppressed systematic conscriptions, which had been really very much weakened through the years in the 1990s. Now the new programming defense legislation is insisting on the military reserves. So instead of recreating conscriptions, we increase very much the capacity of the military reserve in the society. But of course, we have much to learn from other countries also, including in this country. I see there is a strong mobilization, and it's important also for our younger people to bring to them the necessity that, again, we have to face real threats, and they must be ready to defend their country. But this is the way we go through it, through military reserves.
Thank you, and I see that you want to react as well.
Yeah, we have conscription. We also stopped in 2007. Now renewed that. It's based also on lottery. Now we are moving on idea what every young man who is after the school should be invited to the army, and then to decide to go to the army, professional army, or to go to active reserve. But I would say that if you want to defend our countries, especially talking about Russia, we need to understand it's not about only regular forces. It's about the nation will to defend the country. So that's why conscription, military reserve is a vital thing. We should change the mindset. And because, Russia is using quantity which in the future becomes quality. We need to adopt to such kind of enemy to compete with that enemy. So you need to go and to change the mindset that total comprehensive defense is the model which we need to adopt.
This change of mindset is the right point on which we can finish, because I think also recently, a few days ago, a French general was briefing mayors in France, telling them, prepare your publics for a major conflict in Europe. We have to prepare for it mentally, because a real deterrence is not only based on your capabilities, but also on the political will and the societal will to defend Europe. And that is something that we are still short of, especially the more west you go. So we have a lot of work to do. But let me finish on the point where I started. We are going through a systemic transformation. We have a generational mission here to make sure that we go through this transformation of global geopolitics, and that at the end there will be more winners than losers. And we can only do it if we work together in Europe, but also in transatlantic. So let me finish on this note and wish a very nice rest of the conference.